Welcome to the Inspire podcast. This week sees me interview insurance sector guru Ben Harrison. Ben is Vice President of Marsh Commercial and has over 20 years experience in the sector. During the interview we talk about the impact of leadership styles, the changing landscape of insurance, hiring strategies, before looking at how Ben works daily on self-improvement through routines and mentors. As always, I hope this inspires ordinary people to achieve great things. Welcome to the next episode of the Inspire podcast. Today we have Ben Harrison, who's at the top of his game within the insurance market. Ben has been in insurance for the last 23 years and is currently the branch director of Marsh Commercial. Hopefully today, over the course of the podcast, we're going to talk on the insurance sector, how Ben builds relationships with his clients, and also we're going to go through some of the podcasts that Ben and I have shared over the years and talk about the world's top performers and some of the habits and routines that we've picked up. Ben is responsible for 9 staff and over 100 clients. What's impressive about Ben's business is that he's taken his yield per head from 650k and pushed it beyond the £1 million mark. Ben, welcome. Thanks for being here today. 23 years in insurance. How did you first get into it?
So it's quite a long story, but I'll keep it short. I started in insurance at a company called Alliance Auto Direct, doing training credits. I basically wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Went to Iceland, worked there for 2 weeks, loved it, stacking shelves, early starts, thought this is fantastic. Then went to Alliance, and they believed that I was a temp rather than someone on work experience. So they had me transacting policies, doing full quotes, basically putting clients on cover. And it was only at the end of the 2 weeks when I left that they realised that I wasn't sort of suitably qualified or even knew what I was doing. So because I hadn't been given all the rubbish jobs like doing the filing and making the tea, I sort of really enjoyed it. So a job came up at a company called George Myers, which is in Stafford Town Centre, above the Waterstones bookshop at the time. An apprenticeship, got myself involved with that, and didn't move from there. We basically got bought a number of times, ended up at Towergate, and didn't move from there until a call came in from the Beaumont lads, and that's how I got into insurance. It was as simple as that. I really enjoyed it.
So was it work placement, was it, at the time, work experience when you first went into it?
Yeah, I just didn't know what I wanted to do, so I took some advice, and someone said, well, why don't you go and just spend some time on doing training credits, sort of £30 a week, go around different trades, see what you like. And I would say I really enjoyed the 2 weeks at Iceland. I ended up at the Housing Association, and they just basically didn't know what to do with me, shoved me in the corner, pretty much had nothing to do, I was just watching the clock. Did a few of office jobs like that, and then spent a week or two at each one, and then ended up at the insurance brokerage, and they were just flat out busy. They were putting all the phones on hold because they couldn't cope with the number of calls coming in. So when I came in, they just literally slid a load of files over and said, crack on with that. And I just I don't know what to do. And this girl was sitting next to me, just went, just don't worry about it, I'll show you. And then I was like, well, what do I do with this one? She goes, just type this in and just press return. And then, right, okay, and then a quote came up at like 300 quid. She said, I'll just phone up and tell them the quote, and phone the customer up, said this is it, and great, go ahead, and I'll come in and give you a check, because it was back then.
Right, yeah.
And away we went. So I was actually selling policies in the first week.
Okay.
And I got a real buzz from it. And since then I've obviously learned how to do it properly now.
Yeah.
So I'm sure a lot of the people got amazing deals in that week. That's probably why the phones ended up going on hold.
And what sector was that in?
That it was in car and home insurance. So it was fairly basic stuff, the stuff that we all do online now. So it wasn't that complicated really, but I was still writing cover notes, and it was a really exciting few weeks.
Yeah.
I never looked at the clock once. And I think that was the big thing. I was like, I haven't looked at the clock once. All of a sudden I've got to go home, and I actually didn't want to go home. I enjoyed it that much.
And was it a formal apprenticeship, or was it you were just actually going through a training program within the business?
When I went into George Myers, it was classed as a formal apprenticeship, but in reality it was me working in an office with 10 other people, spending time with each one of them, and then learning my way. Them giving me files, asking me to do X, Y, Z, and then having the file back, they'd check it. I was the post boy, so I had to be the first one in to open the post. Had to do it in a certain way with a letter opener. The boss wanted it in a certain way. Stamp the post, take it up, allocate it to people. Doing all those sort of jobs at first, and I think that gives you good grounding, because I'd worked my way from that start up, where you're literally doing the most basic of tasks, and then you had a bit more trust, and back then I was probably on, I don't know, 30-40 pounds a week, but it was I'd often work till 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, even though I was on that money, and walk past and the boss would say, come in and give me a tenner and take it out, and then that was really how it worked. You sort of teach you to put a bit extra in, I guess.
Well, absolutely. I think it's a good lesson for any youngsters listening to this, that even if you're well educated at university, sometimes you can't just go in at a level that you feel is the level you deserve. You've got to go and earn that respect, and you've got to show the work ethic. And often going in and doing jobs that you may not think, you think, oh, hang on a minute, it's a bit basic, but you've got to do them to the best of your ability, and then quickly you will progress.
Yes.
In terms of the niche, so you were talking about car and home insurance. Obviously, I know now that you are into the motor sector, but more haulage and tyres. Could you just give us a bit of a flavour for that? And am I right in saying that is your niche that you work within at the minute?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was at Towergate, loved working there. I had a really good mentor in Peter Worthington. He was a really good guy, but I just felt I'd got a book of clients attached to me, and I felt a bit safe. Like I didn't really need to push myself. So a call came from Beaumont's, and I went and met them, and they were like your classic sales guys, really good guys. Straight away, when you just warm to people, you think these are fantastic. So I decided that was the time for me to take a new challenge. So went to work for them, and they had a real bias towards wheels business, as we call it, a real good risk management proposition around managing claims costs, because ultimately that's going to fuel your premium spend. I dropped into the Shrewsbury office to run that, and they'd got that was an acquisition by Beaumont's. They'd bought the business a couple of years prior, and they had a real expertise in the tyre sector, which went back to the 80s, when businesses first began importing tyres from China, and they couldn't arrange the necessary products liability coverage, and they developed a scheme around that, were able to place the coverage. So we looked at that sector and realised there was a number of businesses within the sector that were doing distribution of tyres, so like your warehouses, a lot of vans on the road doing just-in-time deliveries to each depots, and we realised that the proposition we'd built for the haulage sector, we could move into that distribution sector within tyres, and the model just transferred, and it was really well taken, and we were winning clients every other month, really sizable businesses, and we've built the business around that, and I'll continue to win large haulage accounts as well that really need risk management, and they really need their claims looking at on a granular basis. So every pound that we can save off those claims, it makes a big difference to them.
And if you had to educate yourself in terms of that industry as well as your insurance products that you're clearly selling, so that when you're going into these meetings you can communicate with them knowing the inside track of their business.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit like PSR. You're not generalising, are you, here, in terms of you just go and recruit anyone for anything. There's a lot of that in the insurance sector, whereas we decided, we spoke about Good to Great, didn't we? The Jim Collins, and having looked at that model, we realised that actually there's areas where we've got passion and focus, and I would say our areas are probably construction, haulage, and in the sector we just talked about, the tyre. So we're really passionate about those. When we go to a tyre warehouse and we see how it's all set up, we think this, just the smell of tyres, we think we know what we're doing here. We've got something to talk about. So we've attended regional briefings. We work heavily with the NTDA to attend their seminars, understand what issues are happening within the industry in terms of any fraud that's happening, in terms of tyre thefts, employers' liability. Obviously, if you're a tyre fitter fitting tyres at the roadside, it's very, very dangerous. Particularly on the smart motorways now, that's an issue. So we've been able to educate ourselves on that, on the training that's available, and how we can then make it safer for those people to work. which is ultimately important.
Absolutely. So just dropping back there, I mean, that's a great explanation of how you've developed that niche and how you've educated yourself to trade within it. What I'm interested in is obviously knowing you personally, Ben, is the struggle that you went through after spending 14 years at a business at Towergate. You're a very loyal person.
Yeah.
How did you come about leaving? You spoke about the guys that come pitch to you and sold, but I know it would have needed to be more than that. What were the emotions? How did you come to make the decision of leaving somewhere after 14 years to go on this new adventure?
Yeah, that's a good question. When the call first came in, it was a tough one. I just won a new client, and I was pulling off his car park when the phone call came in from a recruitment consultant. So you've just pitched to a client that you're going to look after him and you're going to see this service proposition through. So immediately that was tough for me to think, how am I going to see this proposition through if I'm not here? So immediately I said, no, I'm not interested. And then he said, look, just come and have a half an hour coffee. I think you'll like these guys. So I thought, well, I may as well. And it was also a difficult time because my wife was pregnant with our first child, so there's some disruption there, and you're thinking, I just need everything to be steady. So I went to see these guys in Shrewsbury, and within 15 minutes I just loved what they were saying. They were operating on a totally different model that I was used to, and it's something I thought was much more modern, and I really liked it. Now, following that meeting, I still wasn't sure how that was going to go, but it went a month by and I hadn't heard anything, and then I started to feel like really disappointed that I hadn't had any follow-up. And the recruitment consultant then phoned me and said, really sorry, we haven't been in touch. The guys have been going through an acquisition, they've been buying another business. It's nothing down there, and then we'd like you to come for a second interview. And then that minute then, because I knew I was disappointed from not having heard from them, I knew that it was something I wanted to progress. So looking back now, I think I can't quite, because my nature isn't like that, but it just felt like the right move. Just went with it. Yeah, and I'd had approaches in the past before, and I hadn't taken them. And I just thought, if I was going to take it, I can't keep turning things down. I've got. If I'm not invigorated and not fired up, and there's no passion now to move on to the next level, I need to move on, and I think that's what I got hold of.
Okay, and you talked about your mentor. I think it was Peter you mentioned. How did you break the news to them and him in terms of your decision to move on, and did he understand the move for you?
Yeah, so that caused a little bit of a stir. Obviously, when you're a salesperson, you go. A senior guy I work with actually, who I was going to work with, said, look, Ben, when you go in, it's going to be difficult. He said, but just remember, and I thought that you're going to be a problem for them now. He's going to have to go and explain to his boss that he's losing a sales guy. There's going to be, it's all going to go off. So you need to plan and think about, what you say and what you do. And I got really nervous about it. I ended up writing a 12-page resignation letter with a handover document attached to it, explaining every single client what their traits were, what they liked, what service they needed, where my files were saved, the whole shooting match. And I just thought that would be normal, but apparently it wasn't.
No.
And they came, one of the people that caused more of an issue, I think, because I'd been quite transparent and quite professional in the way I'd done it, but I just felt like that was needed to be done because I cared about the clients.
You almost enhanced your value at that point, because they could see what sort of person you were and how you'd gone about it in a professional manner. It wasn't you were the transparency absolutely raised your value within that business, I'm sure. And even though it was a tough decision for you, they probably recognised that you'd outgrown that business and that branch, and you needed to go and fly the nest and create your own branch.
And people are always telling you things at the time, aren't you? You're not sure, you want to listen to everyone.
What advice you got to listen to? Absolutely.
Yeah, you can't. But I think that came from me, Claire. It wasn't to enhance my value at all. It was I cared about the clients, and I wanted to make sure that I knew there wasn't going to be loads of people free to look after them straight away. And I'd probably be put on gardening leave, so I wanted to make sure they were being looked after whilst when I left. And that was the case. Many of them are still with Towergate and being very well looked after. So that's great.
Good. Your branch that you then went to was obviously Shrewsbury, where you still are now. Did you go into that branch? Obviously, it's it's yours now. It's your business, if you like, within that branch.
Yeah.
Did you go in to create a culture within there straight away, or have you defined that over the last 6-7 years?
Yeah, we've defined that, certainly. The gentleman who sold the business was a really strong character. He'd built the business up himself, so massive respect for anyone that's done that. But it was quite a close-knit. There was only 3 or 4 people that worked there, and he was leaving the business straight away, so I was pretty much standing straight into his shoes. So I had to establish a system within, in terms of processes, because it was totally foreign to what I was used to. I'd come from a very compliant business with a lot of process and procedure, and I was going into one where there was very good advisors. They knew their stuff, but there was no real process. So we built that pretty much straight away. I would say that I also inherited an exceptionally talented team, very experienced people.
Helps, doesn't it? Yeah.
Who I've learned a hell of a lot of. 2 ladies in particular who had been with the business for 30 years each themselves, and they've pulled me back when I'll come in with this great idea, and they'll go, Ben, I don't think you should do that. This is the reason, and I'll go, yeah, you're right. Actually, I was thinking the same thing, and you benefit of their experience and how well they knew their clients was incredible. So we picked up a hell of a lot from them. So whilst I had all my grand plans in terms of process, I ended up drawing back on their experience a lot as well, and going, actually, the practicalities of that might not look as good as what they do on paper when you actually go and, clients might not be as wowed as I am about this. We need to keep it personal and carry on delivering what they've been delivering.
And there's a skill set in that, isn't there? To you talked about that you get loads of advice, and it's about working out which advice to take. I guess you've done that because it would be very easy to go in to a new branch. You've been somewhere 14 years. It's your opportunity, and just to go and do your own thing. But to have I guess to have that mindset to go, no, I'm actually going to listen to people. I'm going to sort out the right advice and then implement it. I think it is testament to you to do that, and ultimately is why you've taken that sort of 650 per head to $1 million per head. Will be one of the reasons for that you've had that approach. So how would you describe the culture now within that business?
So we've worked really hard on that. It had become a little bit too much where everything was being driven by sales, and when we get to a certain size we realised we had to change that. So we've completely changed the culture by bringing in an office manager. She came in 18 months ago. Her skill set was very much around people development, personal development. She's done wonders for that. We've now got a really good culture where people like to socialise. People talk a lot more in the office. I hadn't actually realised what a bad impact I was having on the business at some points, because it was only when she came in, she said, Ben, have you realised that no one takes lunches here? And I was like, no. She said, well, there's a reason, because you don't take lunches.
Right, okay.
And have you noticed that people just come in, sit at the desk and just work and don't talk to each other? I said, yeah, that's your fault too. So
some home truths coming in from her, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've then had to again change again and realise that actually I need to take a break halfway through the day, because it means that other people will take a break. I hadn't realised that
you were setting standard.
But it was actually setting bad standards, because they need a break during the day, and we've done a lot of work on that when we talk about some of the stuff later. But that personal well-being is really important as well. And I hadn't realised that I was actually creating a bad culture through working like a maniac. But I think when I look at where the business is now, we had to do that in the early years because we had to build a business up to a certain level of income to make it profitable. So you're conscious of that. You're conscious of getting that income up so that you're making money. I think where we are now, if we looked at the income we had back then, they would probably go, you're not profitable. Whereas because we've worked like that mad in the early days. But then you go for that evolution, don't you? And then you sit back and go, actually, we need to get some better behaviours in here now. And we've worked really hard the last 18 months. Really good team, really enjoyable place to work. We don't lose people. People tend to stay. So
staff retention's high. I think with it's generational as well, isn't it? The insurance sector generationally years ago did things very differently, and the type of person that works within it is very different to now.
Yeah.
And you're right, it would have just been a, work hard, play hard, you're working the duty screen, you don't take a lunch break, and you're working on hours. Now the expectations of people is totally different in terms of the way they're treated in the workplace.
Yes.
Which we've spoken about.
Yeah.
And now, if you were looking for the next hire within your team, what are the skills, attributes, educational background that you look for to complement the team that you've got?
Yeah, so I always like to say character and common sense. They're the two things that first and foremost that we look at. You need to have some skill sets. That is also important. I think if you go into a sales role, obviously you look for a different character set than if we're looking for our administration people. Where we've come from in terms of how we've been able to build a business, we've been really good at getting people to do more of what they're good at. So we now got salespeople who we've stripped a lot of admin away from them. We don't want them sitting and doing the admin. Whereas the admin team I've got exceptionally good in terms of technical ability. So we then look at how we source them in terms of skills. What I would say is the company we work for now, the training that is available to them is absolutely second to none. No one in the industry can provide the level of training that we've got. We've got a full career link portal which they can go on and access hundreds and hundreds of online courses, to anything from Excel to looking at marine cargo clauses to casualty covers to employees liability claims. They can do all the courses they want on those, and then obviously we also support the professional development as well moving forwards. But I think character and common sense is the first two that I look at. Because they've got to fit into our team, and when it's a small team, you bring in the wrong person, you've got real problems. And like my father-in-law always says, he says if we make a mistake in sales, we lose a sale. If you make a mistake in HR, you have to say hello to them every morning.
Yeah, it's true.
Makes your job important, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. And I think the culture that you've created is obviously a good one now. And like you say, that wrong hire can destroy that overnight. So you've got to be very particular. And on the podcast we've done so far, all the sort of business leaders, people at the top of their game, when you ask them about hiring, I don't think one of them's gone, it's actually about educational level. It's always about the character, about the common traits that you look for in people, the values, their honesty, their integrity. And for any young person listening to this, they've got to take that on board and go, actually, if I haven't done that great at school, it's not the end of the world. As long as you apply yourself well to anything, you'll be okay. And of course, personal development, education is important, and you can develop that over your career at whatever stage. And on that note, if there's a young person out there now that's thinking about insurance as a career, what advice would you give them? Yeah,
so the advice I would give them would be to start with at the bottom, to work the way up, to learn the absolute basics to start off with, and then develop their skill set from that. What my advice to anyone going into insurance is, don't think of it as being insurance. It's not like you're going to be an insurance salesman knocking on doors. It's really not like that. We spend a lot of time with clients getting right into under the bonnet of their business, understanding how their business works, how they hire, how they market their business, how they manage their fleet, how they discipline drivers if they have an accident, all these sort of things. And you get to understand how businesses work, and you get to understand managing directors and how they've built the business up and their own story. And we've got so many great stories from our clients and how they've started with one vehicle, one employee, selling tyres, or got one that's built his own house, and then he's ended up building loads of houses, and then now he's making turnover's huge. So there's always good stories behind them as well. So you learn so much by working in the insurance sector.
It's interesting that if you look at that's I would deem it as a client strategy, and you're obviously picking clients at the start of a journey, and you're riding the wave with them all the way through to their big business. And again, there's a massive skill in picking the right timing and execution, which clearly you've done well. And that brings me on to my next question, really, which is, you've excelled over the years at relationship management, I would say. What are your top tips, or what do you do differently to others in terms of relationship management?
Yeah, so we focus very heavily on asking good questions. So if quite often in our industry, a sales guy will go straight into the questions to try and get a quote. Just want to get the raw information to go and get a quote and try and win the account and price. We work very hard at asking other questions where we can essentially find some solutions to the problems that the MD or the FD or the operations director's got. I think that's really important. Then we keep it simple. I think quite often in a lot of trades, people try and overcomplicate things to try and impress. Whereas I like to think that, due to the way I think, is to keep it as simple as possible, because then I can develop an easier solution, a simpler solution. I think over the years I've been able to come up with simple solutions, but I've always been able to follow them through. And I think that's probably why I've had clients for 20 years, because I've never failed to deliver on what I promise. I think if I was going in with some really complicated solutions that were unachievable, I'd probably have my client for maybe 6 months or a year.
You get found out quickly, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. And most of the best solutions have always been if I look back, the models we've built, they're simple models, but they're just repeated over and over again, until we get so good at it that it just works so well. It's like
drive that efficiency level then, don't you, by doing the basics well?
Absolutely, yeah.
Over and over again, repetition of it.
Correct. And then you move on from that, and you get exceptional people coming in doing the basics well. And then I think then you've got a real business when you're doing the basics really, really well. I think that's huge.
Okay, and you spoke about different models that you've created. The insurance market will have progressed somewhat in the last 23 years, I'm sure, in terms of the way you do business. I was listening to a podcast with Yuri Levine, who was talking about businesses constantly needing to move forward, else they will be replaced or they will die. In effect, he referenced the insurance market, and he's talking about car insurance, about how potentially we go to a service where you just dial a car like an Uber and you get in it and it takes you, rather than people owning them. So insurers should be insuring on a price per mile rather than a price per car. Interesting concept. What are your thoughts on that? How have you seen the insurance market develop, and how do you think it will develop? Yeah,
so I'm quite vociferous about this. You talked about selection criteria for recruitment, and the amount of times I've interviewed salespeople, and they've sat in front of me and I've said, "Tell me how you service your clients. Tell me about your sell," and their sell will be, so I've got these clients, and I just pop in and have a cup of tea. And I'll say, "Sorry, what do you talk about?" And I'll say, "I'll talk about football," but that's not really a sell. What are you advising them on? So, well, it's just about relationships. It's about. Now that would concern me, because I think now the businesses are busier than ever. Everyone's looking for efficiency. Everyone's time is very valuable. People are looking for good advice. I think as soon as you stop adding value by giving good advice and giving them direction on their risk management programs, we will be replaced. Now, there's a great deal of business that can be transacted digitally, and that's the way it will go for the small commercial businesses who don't change much year to year, who don't really have time to sit with an insurance broker for 2 hours at 10 o'clock because they're on some precision engineering, making a piece of kit. Those are the ones that will be able to say, well, actually, I'll do that tonight at 6 p.m. when everyone's gone. I can sit on the computer, I can update my sums insured, I can change my alarm if I've had a new alarm, I can do all that online. I do think that's the way it will go eventually.
So the use of digital will be...
The use of digital, backed up with, but actually now I've got a problem with a claim, can someone come and talk to me about it? Then absolutely we can do that. But I think we've got to mix it. I don't think we can just keep kicking the can down the road and accepting that, no, clients will always want us to go and see them. Because I don't think that's the case. I think as the millennials come through, I think they'll be more comfortable going, actually, we can tap this into a computer. We don't need to sit with you whilst you write the information down on a piece of paper to drive back to the office and type it into your computer. We can just do that for you. So, and then there'll be obviously efficiencies in pricing and costing as a result of that. So it's an exciting time in ways because they will need the advice, but I think it needs to be matched up with a technical and digital journey.
It's interesting because you talked about the change in your client, because and business owners, the age of them will change. They will become the millennial business owners who communicate in a very different way. So you're right to say that the merging of the tech, but still the face-to-face service is required, and that's an interesting way that you proposition that, and totally advocate that within our business as well.
But Thomas Cook thought that holidays would never be purchased online, didn't they? So that's happened.
Yes.
So we need to learn those lessons and build our model ready for it, I think.
We did always be disruptors in the market. You've got to almost embrace them and work ahead of them, haven't you? Rather than just it'll never happen, like you say, kicking the can down the road. They do happen and they can come quickly. Okay, but that's fantastic in terms of that overview of the insurance market. What I'd like to do is delve a little bit deeper into you personally, and I mentioned on the intro that you are heavily into personal development and bettering yourself. From a physical perspective and education and business. The first question, I guess, is you're into team sport. What sort of transferable skills do you think people within sport can bring to business?
Oh, there's absolutely loads, Dave. I've been fortunate to play with so many different footballers, and obviously at an amateur level, but I don't think there's a single one that I haven't learned something off down the years, in terms of that I apply to each day into working life. You look at some of the lads we know, that their own discipline in the way they prepare, and the advice they give you during football matches and how they prepare for training even. There's loads of transferable skills. I think a lot of it surrounds discipline. I think a lot of it surrounds pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. It's not easy to go into a new changing room, for example. It's not easy to face up when you've had a bad game and come in and look the manager in the eye. And there's a lot of transferable skills that come from that. And how you approach each game is really, really important. I also think it teaches you a bit of humility, maybe at times. One game you think you're the bee's knees, and the next game you're getting pulled after 20 minutes. Football is it gives you instant feedback, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Football that you don't necessarily get at work. Sometimes you can have a poor time of it for a while before someone pulls you. Whereas football, you get that instant feedback. So I think that helps you really. I think it toughens you up. I think when you've had someone, you can, depends on how far you go over it, I suppose, but when you've had people, shouting you down at half time, or even at the end of a game, or even at training, you become a bit tougher, I think.
Used to the feedback, used to the instant feedback, and it might be a raised voice, it might be a grab by the collar, but it does get you used to it. And the transfer with the communication is clearly key here, isn't it? And having the ability to communicate with a diverse array of people in the changing room who are all working in different environments that come together, and it's almost like a sacred area, isn't it, the changing room, in terms of the way you're all equal in there, aren't you, at that point?
Absolutely.
Someone could pull up in a Range Rover, someone could pull up in a battered vehicle, and when you step into that change room, it's equal.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the beauty of it, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's in many ways there's nowhere I'd rather be than a football change room. When you're winning, it's the best place ever. But even when you're losing, you're learning, aren't you? You're getting, you have two choices. It's do you sulk, or do you think, no, actually I'm going to go out and improve? And I can't say I've got it right a lot of the time, but sometimes you go out and prove them right, don't you? Sometimes you go out intending to prove them right and prove them wrong, and you go out and prove them right because you're just as bad second half as you were first half. But I think ultimately it does harden you a little bit, so that when you almost, I think I've found going to work, sometimes you almost actually want more feedback, because you when you're not getting the feedback. Yeah, you're used to it. You almost thinking like, am I doing well or not here? Am I, are there areas I can improve? And sometimes when you're in sales and your numbers are good, everyone just leaves you alone. Whereas, if you've had a bad day or so, you need perhaps sometimes pulling in and having that chat.
People management, isn't it, really, with that as well? Trying to recognise that within your people.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at some of the lads we've played football with, and they're not in management positions or they're not even in leadership roles, and yet they'll be some of the best communicators I've probably come across. We're thinking of one of our lads, are probably talking about, but I talk a lot about his sort of quiet leadership. So his way of managing was on the pitch was always to go and have a quiet word. So he would know that I wouldn't like to be really called out in front of everyone, criticised and shouted at. Whereas he would come up to me, stand next to me and go, Ben, can you just look at doing this a little bit? We're losing the ball a little bit too much, just keep hold of it. You've had a few now that have gone astray. And then you think, I'm going to do that for him because he's not humiliated me. He's had a little chat, and then you respect them even more, don't you? And you think I'm going to put that right. And
it's the skill. And you talked about taking bits of advice from people. Again, we spoke about it a few times now. And it's taking the advice, but a lot of people can take advice, but then embedding it in their day-to-day routines is a very different thing, as you know. And when it becomes a habit, that's when it becomes powerful. And that's what I want to go into now in terms of habits and routines. Obviously, I know about what how you've developed this, and you've worked very hard at it.
Yeah.
Could you give the listeners a run through of your daily routine and how you've embedded that in your day-to-day life?
Well, firstly, this is all your fault because I was quite happy without a daily routine, and then you shared a book with me, didn't you, and said this is a game changer. You sent it to me and said, have a read of this.
Tools of Titans.
Of Titans, and it came through, and I started reading parts of it, and then jumped around, and then just stuff started to make sense. I didn't really have, whilst I've always felt like I'm someone that can see things through, I didn't really do it often enough, and I really bought into the habit concept. So the more I was doing something, it just became second nature. So we ended up going from book to book, didn't we? But we started off with the Tools of Titans. We then looked at Jocko Willink. We looked at his discipline equals freedom stuff, and we just thought we'll try it. We're like being like human guinea pigs almost.
Yes.
So the craziness of some of the things, you were just like, well, I can't do that. And then once you start doing it, all of a sudden you realise you can. So the routine at the moment is to, I don't want to sound like one of those who goes, who does all this crazy
no, it worked
stuff
for you. What works for you? Yeah.
So it's to rise early. When the alarm goes off, get up. Don't snooze. Don't roll over and think I'm going to stay in bed. Just get up. And I wouldn't say I get up stupidly early every day, but I make sure I don't sleep too much. So get up as soon as I wake. As soon as my eyes open, I get up. I think that's important. Straight downstairs to make a shake, because I like it to be frozen. I've worked out my routine's about 1 hour 20, and 1 hour 20 is when my shake gets to a nice sort of slush, ready for the commute to work. Straight into the garage to do workout. Workout normally takes 30 to 40 minutes. Get that done.
What workout are you doing at the minute?
So I tend to do the T25 or Insanity programs, and I do those every morning. I'm still trying to kick a ball about, as you know. So if I have training of a night, then obviously I won't do the morning. So that's very rare. That's perhaps train once every 2 weeks. And if I play a game on a Sunday, then I'll do the Insanity on a Monday morning, but I won't do it on a Sunday. So do the workout upstairs, hot shower, followed by a cold shower, which was your advice again. And a sort of, once you said you were doing it, I felt like I had to do it.
Yeah.
And I hate it every single morning, but it does get easier, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And then you go out and and then I'm ready to go. A couple of vitamins which have helped keep the colds away. And then I have my shake on the way to work, and I've also included within that process to read a book, maybe 10 pages, and that's either morning or night, depending on my schedule.
Yeah.
The meditation we do a little bit of, but I wouldn't say I can't sit and say I do that every day, but I've done it today, and I try and do it when I can. I think that's important as well, because to keep your head clear. So that's been my routine. I've tried to move away from tech.
Yeah.
So I've reduced my social media. I'm not on any of the social media platforms now, apart from LinkedIn. That's the only one that's left. And then try and stay away from my phone after 8 o'clock. Sometimes that's difficult, but
how have you found coming off tech? Because it's something that if I come off tech for a period of time, I do generally feel better in terms of your mindset and how you feel. Have you seen significant improvements in your mood?
Yeah.
Or is that FOMO, that fear of missing out almost with what's going on in a WhatsApp group or on LinkedIn, or not LinkedIn, on Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is?
Yeah.
How have you felt?
Yeah, it was funny at first. Facebook went 4 years ago and sort of got rid of that, and that was a bit funny at first, 3 or 4 months, and then I don't miss it. Twitter came off probably 3-4 months ago. Again, haven't missed it. I've not struggled at all really. The other change I made was when I go on holidays to turn my phone off and leave it at home.
Okay.
So that's 2 weeks completely without any contact from anyone, which drives my wife crazy, because if my mum will be saying, "How's Ben?" and she'll have to sort of go, "Can you tell him on my way?" I'm say, "Tell her I'm fine," and then she'll message you back and say he's fine. But ultimately, that's been really good as well, and it's amazing how great I think that is for my staff when they know they can't contact me for 2 weeks.
Empowers them somewhat.
Yeah. Empowers them. It shows them that I trust them, and I know that they're more than capable of answering anything that I could do. And I think that's really important. When you've got a good team around you, they can take that heat. And then I come back, and I'm like a nightmare for a week when I get back, because I've been reading books whilst I'm away. I'm totally fired up with all these ideas.
Yeah.
I'm coming in and go, "Guys, we're going to do this. We're going to do this," and they're going, "No, Ben, just chill out a little bit, will you?
Yeah.
Just turn your phone on, check your emails." And I've checked my emails and I've dealt with everything. It's brilliant. And then I'll turn my phone on, it's like 500 WhatsApps or whatever, and most of it's nonsense.
Yeah.
And then I realise actually how much time I must spend wasting.
Yeah.
When I'm on tech, catching up with all the WhatsApps when you get back from holiday after 2 weeks, you realise, goodness me, this must be disrupting the hell out of me.
Yeah.
Every day I must be trawling through this. And there's some nice stuff, arranging a golf trip or whatever like that's good. But it's amazing how much noise you have to cut through on a daily basis when you've been off tech for 2 weeks. But I would recommend it to anyone, because I think it's important.
And would you just share with people the impact it had in terms of the time spent with your children when you put your tech away, and you found yourself doing more with them, and the impact it had on them? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, of course you end up like Mitch Buchanan, don't you? On holiday, you just sort of strolling around the pool, jumping in.
The young listeners might not know who Mitch Buchanan is, but
Baywatch, So I'm on lifeguard duty for the 2 weeks, but you'd think that you would get bored, and you don't, because you don't have a default position that if you're bored you pick up your phone. Your default position when you haven't got your phone is to actually think, well, actually, what should we do, boys?
Can do productively.
Shall we do some swimming? Shall we play pig in the middle? All this sort of stuff. So you have to come up with some creativity, and you just end up like a little kid for 2 weeks. And it was. I think it's really important. I think it's
a good message.
Yeah, definitely. And then the fact that they're not allowed their tablets isn't that bad, because I haven't got any tech, so they're gonna have to fit in with me.
Yeah, you're setting a good example, rather than an example of, well, my dad sits on his phone and mum sits on the phone, and you actually, no, you don't need to do that. Which obviously in the younger generations now is default, to go on their phone.
I think it's a mask, isn't it? You almost wear it's a very easy option. It's a bit of a cop out.
Yeah,
that's what I was finding for me. I'm not saying everyone's like that, but I think for me it was a bit of a cop out, that actually rather than getting up and thinking about something to do with the kids or the wife or whatever it is, I'll have a scroll on my phone, see what's on Twitter or something like that.
It's also interesting. I was having a coffee the other day and doing some people watching, and saw a group of people come together that clearly were meeting for the first time, and it was very much do the say hello, shake the hand, and then it was default phone out because there was an uncomfortableness of not knowing the group. So instead of actually communicating and finding some common themes of how you get on with people, it was just, well, I'll take my safety net out and I'll just look at my hand for a bit.
Yeah.
And I think that is where we're at as a society, and I think we can all do a little bit to change and improve that.
Well, leading back to on the insurance side as well, Dave, is that we're seeing accident rates up massively up on the codes of hitting vehicles in rear, and I see some footage and you just know straight away they're on the phones.
Yeah.
You know, there's no reason for them to hit the vehicle in front. They're not looking where they're going. And in fact, on the way driving up here, there was a car behind me, and his eyes were constantly looking down. Young daughter in the front seat, another child in the back seat, and you think, well, you're not even looking at the road. You've got children in the car. But I think it's becoming an addiction.
Yes, it is.
And it frightens me to death, really. You know, how dangerous it is. But people know it's dangerous.
Yeah.
But they still think
do it.
They still think I've got to do it.
Yeah. It's a habit thing, isn't it?
It's a habit. It's terrible. Yeah, I really do. I think it's it. Yeah.
Okay, so the podcast books that we've talked about Tools Titans, and you talked about Jocko. What are you listening to? What are you reading at the minute?
Yeah, so I'm reading at the moment the English and Their Histories, which goes back to Homo sapien times, and then it's moving through. I've just gone through the Tudors, the Anglo-Saxons, reading all about them, and I'm glad that I didn't live around those periods. I don't think I'd have lasted a minute. So I'm reading that at the moment. I've just finished Principles by Ray Dalio, as you know, and I probably need to read that again because it just blew my mind. All the differences and how they monitor things and the systems they put in place. And in fact, we've developed some of those systems ourselves from the Principles book in the Shrewsbury operation. So really enjoyed that. I've also bought the Seth Godin book, which was good, called The Dip. I think that was a really interesting book. Read that one recently, and I've been buying books and just putting them in the shelf ready to read them as soon as I see one.
You've got a new bookshelf that
I've got a new bookshelf that I need to fill. So I've been putting them in there, and it's been good. I think the reading of books is great to do it at night as well, rather than so I've tried to replace the tech with reading a book before I go to bed. To try, because I think sleep's really important as well, isn't it? I think one of the things we've realised through some of the stuff we've been doing is how important sleep is.
Absolutely. I think it's people don't do enough in terms of learning about sleep and looking at themselves, and share one thing that we looked at is where if you actually monitor your mood and score yourself on a daily basis and write down everything you've done, keep it on a spreadsheet over a period of time, when you actually look at the data, you can see your mood and how you perform under how many hours of sleep, and then work out what your premium is and what things in the day. Because I think I mentioned to you, I worked out quickly that when I travel on the train, my mood was very different to when I travel in the car. Because when I travel in the car, I'm listening to podcasts, educate myself, and feel great. But on the train, it's just different. I was probably watching, a TV show, doing work, taking phone calls, and it's just a very different experience. But without monitoring it, and you're looking at the data, you don't work that out, do you? Because you just go day to day. So, and I'm like that as well. So, like we've talked about it, I run a spreadsheet on. Put my exercise in. I put certain your life data.
Some data. We spoke about it. We got rid of the watch. So decided that the watch wasn't influencing my thought process. So rather than me look at watch and think, I haven't done enough steps today, or I thought I'd get rid of the watch and monitor some things that are more important, like mood. How many minutes of exercise I've done each day. Then looking at times that we spent, who we spent it with, whether my mood goes up or down when I'm doing certain activities. It's been quite an interesting development, that, and it doesn't take much time.
I recommend that to anybody listening with this, and it's quite simple we both use Google Sheets. It's on your phone at all time. You can get it on any device, and it's really quick and easy to do. Maybe we'll put the template up on the show notes of just how we utilise it for people to download and maybe have a look at it themselves. So thanks for that, Ben. Just a couple of questions to finish up, if you could, you're well read, as we've talked about. You've got one book you can gift to somebody. What's that one book you're going to gift? What would it be?
I think it would be the Tour of Titans one.
Right. Okay.
I think it's so. For me, I like reading in bite-sized chunks.
Yep.
To keep some of my concentration levels, as you know, isn't great. You know, if when you used to do football training with me, you'll know that I last for about 3 minutes. So the Tour of the Titans is about 4 or 5 page chunks, isn't it? So
yes.
you can read one of those and pick it up again. And I like reading stories about people and how people behave.
Yeah,
I've really enjoyed doing that, and seeing how the different and there's some common themes in there, wasn't there?
There is, yeah.
A lot of them do very similar things in slightly different ways, and their attention into routine I thought was really good. You know, like writing down the goals in the morning, which we both do, don't we? Write
affirmations,
down things.
And the meditation was common, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The workout was common. You know, the amount people invest in the physical side of it. And just to give people an idea what Tools of Titans is, it's Tim Ferriss looking at the habits of successful performers worldwide from an absolute array of backgrounds. So it could be sports, it could be film, it could be music, it could be skateboarding, and he basically looks and delves into their habits and routines. And like Ben says, it's bite-sized. So each chapter is about that person and some of the common themes. So yeah, well worth a read. So the last one, Ben, and I'd like to end on this one, is aspirations for you personally. Insurance, 23 years, as we've mentioned, running a successful branch. What are your aspirations for the next sort of 10 years? Where do you want to be?
Yeah, so I always like to look at, I've always done sort of 5-10 year plans. For me, at the moment, it's always a difficult one to think about where you're going to be in that time, because I'm in a sector that changes so fast. I'm really excited for where we'll be in 5-10 years time. I'm looking more I'm quite excited about the leadership piece, but I think that's something that I probably would be there in 10 years, because I think it takes a long time to develop that leadership side of things. We're already developing it with some of the things we've learned about over, in terms of the things we've already talked about today. But in 10 years, I kind of take an attitude where each day I want to just get up and give my best, and then in the past that's just worked out for me. So I just enjoy working. Whether it's going in the morning and writing my goals and achieving them, or whether it's washing my car, or whether it's going outside and cutting the grass, whatever it is, the simple things, I like to do it well. So as long as I'm in that position in 10 years where I can keep putting a shift in each day and emptying the tank, as I like to say, I'm quite happy, Dave. I'm quite content with where I am. I think when you work hard, everything comes to you. You
get your rewards, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do like being busy, but I think I've learned over the last 2 years that it's not always the best either. It's sometimes you need to sit back, and whilst you can work hard without just being a busy fool. So I think it'll be interesting to see where insurance goes and the way the office works in 10 years. Will the office look like it looks now?
Probably not. No.
Will we all be working from home? Will we be in
co-working spaces?
Spaces. I don't know. Leadership interests me, but I just love the client work so much. That I don't ever know whether there'll be a period where I'm not running around them up and down the motorway, asking clients those questions and trying to find solutions, because I think that's what I just love doing.
Oh, well, thanks for that, Ben. You've obviously naturally build good rapport with people, and relationships matter to you, which is why you've had such extensive relationships over long periods of time. People continue to buy with you. Retention of client, retention of staff, there's a common theme here. So Ben, thanks a lot for your time today.
Thanks, Dave.
The podcast is all about inspiring people to do more, to ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Hopefully today Ben's given you an insight into his business, into the insurance insurance sector and some of the personal development, coming from an office of an apprenticeship through to a branch director over a 23-year period, just demonstrating that doing your best every day can get you to where you want to be in life. And Ben is a great example of that. So hope everyone's enjoyed it. We'll add the couple of things that we've mentioned into the show notes. And Ben, thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks, Dave. Cheers, mate.